I'm not around, have you found? I'm always on your mind. Welcome back, everyone, to the Boiling Point Podcasts. I know that you've missed us over the last 10 days or so that we've been not had released a new episode, but we are back now. And we have senior faith correspondent Pastor Gavin with us here for episode 42, Earth, Why Its Age is Overestimated. After we did, Pastor Gavin and I did an episode on our last episode,
dinosaurs
and the Bible. We got a lot of messages back, a lot of Facebook people commenting. So Pastor Gavin and I have decided to talk about why Earth is in fact only a few thousand years old and not in fact a few million years old, with scientific fact. As we bring you here on the Boiling Point Podcasts, we bring faith and science together as they should be, not at odds with each other. So Pastor Gavin, welcome back to the Boiling Point Podcasts. It's great to have you again.
Oh, thank you. Good to be here, and want to welcome our audience. Let's pray. Father in heaven, we thank you for this day. We pray that you would lead us and guide us, and that you would help me not to say anything that's not accurate, and you would guide us. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen. And we're also thankful because we have Pastor Gavin here on camera finally with the microphone working. How about that?
Yeah, good.
For the first time, Pastor Gavin gets here and the microphone is working for him. As you know, most of the time he appears remotely or just an audio podcast because we can never get the camera and the microphone working at the same time. Today we seem to be having it working. Let's hope it stays working through the whole podcast. Pastor Gavin, we're going to talk about Earth and why people are wrong about it being millions of years old.
Right. Why the age of the Earth is often overestimated.
Yes.
So now, none of us were around when the universe came into existence. I mean, I wasn't here. I don't think any of our listeners or viewers were either. So, really, we got to try to figure out, how it happened. So, the biblical worldview that as Christians we would espouse, by faith, we believe that the worlds were framed by the Word of God. By faith, we believe in the beginning God created the heaven and the earth. Okay, so the atheist or the evolutionist or the naturalist is someone who just believes in the natural world, not anything else, not the supernatural world, the spirit realm. They would, by faith, believe that the universe came into existence by itself, just somehow magically appeared. They believe in miracles. Their whole worldview begins with a miracle, that it just popped into existence, and random chance and random processes brought all this order together and all this complexity. So both evolution and creationism are matters of faith. And so as we look at it, we see that the Christian worldview, the biblical worldview, the theistic worldview with God creating everything, that makes more sense scientifically and rationally too.
Yeah. I would agree with that, yes. People who think that all of a sudden there was just this big bang and everything just came into an existence is that's definitely a leap of faith there you're taking.
Yeah. Well, so what I'd like to talk about first is, why do people believe in millions of years? So when we're trying to figure out how it happened and how long it took and how old the Earth is, where does this idea of millions of years come from? Why do people believe that? Well, one reason is because evolutionists, they know that plants and animals can't change from one kind of animal or plant into another type of plant or animal. They know you just can't change a dog into a cat or some other creature. They know that. So the only way they could conceivably think that maybe it might be possible is to add millions of years. So in their scheme of thinking, well, if you just have enough time, anything's possible. Okay, so I guess they forget about the thing. What about the problem of life coming from non-living things? I mean, the whole atheistic way of looking at it in evolution, living things came from non-living things, according to their way of believing, their religion. So that kind of makes this idea of things coming into existence and evolving from smaller to greater, more and more complex things, it kind of makes it seem like it's possible. But what they fail to realize is that that deep time can work against them, too. And from what we know about the universe and life on Earth, there's a second law of thermodynamics. And that says that, things deteriorate. Entropy, which is a term for disorder, increases in a closed system over time. So time can work against you. They don't seem to think of that.
Yeah.
Now, see, up until like the late 1700s, early 1800s, either people didn't really know how old the universe was, or probably some people thought it was eternal. But in the Western world, with the biblical worldview, we had more of the young Earth view, like probably around 6,000 years from creation to where we are now. But in the 1830s, there was a man named Charles Lyell, Lyle, and he was a godless man, had sort of an anti-Christian worldview, and he came up with the idea that the Earth was millions of years old. Now, someone before him had that idea, and I'm sure other people had that before him, but Charles Lyell, in like between 1830 and 1833, wrote a book called Principles in Geology. And so, he looked at the side of a cliff and he saw the different layers, and he came up with the idea that the layers, each layer of rock represented millions of years, so we've been here for millions and millions of years. So that's where that idea really, took up, it grabbed a lot of steam, so to speak. And that's one book that Charles Darwin began to read. So when he went on his trip on, I think the name of his boat was the Beagle, and served as like a naturalist, he read that book by Charles Lyell. That's where he got the idea, oh look, the Earth is really millions of years old. And then his belief in evolution that he spawned came from that. So that's one reason why people believe in millions of years. They feel they have to have that to explain the universe and life without God. Okay, but there's a second reason why people believe in millions of years, and they overestimate the age of the Earth. And that's that in our public educational system, from kindergarten through college and universities, that's what's taught. Evolution is taught. And, you watch a television show with National Geographic. They have millions of years ago. And, that's the way that people look at it. So our culture and our public school system, it's sort of designed to have people think that. So, it's there. Several years ago, there was this guy. Maybe you remember him. He was an actor and a Hollywood celebrity, and for a while he hosted Family Feud. I think that was a show. His name was Ben Stein.
Oh, Ben Stein.
Yeah.
I don't know if he actually hosted Family Feud
or was it
or
a
not,
different
but he
game
did
show?
have his own. He did
Yes.
have his own game show.
Yeah.
Yes, I know Ben Stein.
Yeah, and he was like, he would say exciting words, but he showed no excitement. Like, oh wow, I'm really amazed, and that's what made him funny. Like, he was just so low key and so. Well, anyway, Ben Stein, he produced a movie. From what I understand, he wrote the script and everything. He designed and produced this movie and starred in it too. It was more of a documentary, and it was called Expelled, No Intelligence Allowed. And in it, he documented several instances where college and university teachers and professors were expelled from their college or university because they believed in, rather than Darwinism, they believed in intelligent design. Now, what's intelligent design? Well,
if I can make a joke, if I can insert a joke here, intelligent design is a term that people who don't believe in God coined in order to say that there was some kind of intelligence behind our existence, behind the way Earth is, but it wasn't God. So,
Yeah.
as weird as that sounds, so there can be an intelligent designer, but it can't be God. That's what I always found hilarious about intelligent design. Oh, an intelligent designer designed us. Oh, you mean God? No, 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 of course not. That's ridiculous. So, that's what intelligent design is. It's a term that people who don't want to believe in God coined so that they could still say that God designed everything without actually saying that God designed everything.
Right, yeah. Well, the guy that coined that term, intelligent design, there was a man, a scientist. He was a microbiologist. So he would study bacteria and, real teeny tiny things you can't see with a naked human eye, too small. So Michael Behe began to study microbiology, and he noticed, even bacteria, we think of them as fairly simple, but they're very complex. And under an electron microscope, he could see some bacteria had what amounted to a little hair-like thing that was like a propeller that, moved them through liquids. And on a small molecular level, it was like it had an outboard motor on it. He saw these things that he came to the conclusion, hey, they're too complex to just have arisen by pure chance. They have the appearance of design. Now, he wasn't a Christian, and he didn't come out and say God is the designer. We would,
Yeah.
But, so that's where that came from. So what Ben Stein documented in his movie was that these teachers and professors that would say, I don't really believe in Darwinism, I believe in intelligent design. They were removed from their positions. They were fired, no longer able to teach. They weren't even able to discuss that option. Now, why would that not be allowed? Well, because intelligent design and the truthfulness of it makes evolution look silly. So people are only allowed to consider that one view. So it's like with the lamestream media.
Yeah.
If you only see one view
That is correct.
Of things, and you're gonna say, oh, it must be true. So that's why you have people that are perfectly healthy and young, with perfectly fine immune systems, walking outside by themselves with a mask on, or in their car alone driving, where they don't need a mask, but they're wearing one anyway because they're freaked out, because all they see is freak out information.
Yep.
They never get the whole story, so they've been conditioned to think one way.
Yep.
So when you're taught that, oh, things are millions of years old, then when you look at things, that's the word for that is that's your presupposition.
Yep.
So if you've been fed that presupposition and conditioned to think that way, that's what you're going to think. So that's another reason why people tend to overestimate the age of the Earth. So what we're going to do today is present the other side of the story, that there are scientists and scientifically minded people that have scientific facts that show a different point of view. So, but that's another reason. So, the idea of deep time, it's taught in public education, and no other view is even allowed to be discussed. But the third reason why people overestimate the age of the Earth and of the universe is because God created a mature creation. So there's some aspects of the creation that might appear older than it actually is. And here's what I mean. So take, for example, when God created the trees and the plants, he didn't create all little tiny seedlings. It's obvious because he put Adam and Eve in the garden to tend it and to keep it. So, there were huge, massive trees, no doubt, and they looked like they would be very ancient. But the week of creation, they were less than 1 week old.
Yeah.
And the same with Adam and Eve. When God created them, he created them fully mature. So they weren't little babies.
They weren't children, yeah.
Right. So in the first week of their life, they looked a lot older than just, a few days old. So, and I've heard what I'm saying right now about the mature creation. I've heard people misunderstand this and even malign this position and misrepresent it. And they'll say, oh, you mean God tried to trick us to make it look like it's older than it is? No, it has nothing to do with God trying to trick us. It's just we don't know everything.
Yeah.
So when we as humans look at it it looks like it's a lot older than it really is. Why? Because God made it mature. So, it doesn't surprise me.
Yeah.
Some things would look and appear older than what they actually are. So, what are some things that people point to wrongly assume that the universe is millions of years old? Well, let's take what Charles Lyell looked at. Okay, Charles Lyell looked at the different rock layers, and he assumed, they were laid down over periods of millions and millions of years. Well, we know that that's not true. Now, there are several things that show us that that's not true. First of all, if you have ever gone to the sides of a cliff and looked at the different rock layers, another example of this would be the Grand Canyon. I've never been at the Grand Canyon before, but the Grand Canyon is one place where God, in essence, it looks like he said, okay, you want to see how I did it? You want to see what the crust of the earth looks like? Here, it's ripped open. Now, we know God didn't do that.
Yeah.
Now, there are some people that say that the river that runs through there over millions and millions of years carved the canyon.
Yeah.
But you see, the view that I hold and creationists would hold is that it wasn't a little bit of water over a long period of time. It was a lot of water over a short period of time. You see, there was a huge lake that filled the equivalent of several states, and it was sort of dammed up, and the dam broke. So all the water ran through and cut that canyon. So it was a lot of water, in connection with the flood of Noah over a shorter period of time. And so it eroded away massive amounts of rock and dirt and soil, probably before the rock was fully hardened. So now you can see what the crust of the earth is like. So there are different layers, and they're very distinct from one another. I mean, I have some pictures of them somewhere here, if I could find them real quickly.
And some of these pictures we'll put up on the screen for you to see, as we always do.
Okay, well, there's that's one picture. That's more of a drawing or a diagram that gives.
Yeah.
We'll put these up later on.
Yeah, we're going to put these up on the screen for you.
But you've seen them. If you go by the side of a highway where they cut the cliff away.
Yeah, you can see the different layers of rock. That's what you're talking about when you see a cliff face.
Yeah. I'm trying to find where I had them here. Anyway, we'll find
keep looking. We can keep looking. We'll find it. We're gonna get these pictures to put up for you so that you can see it. There's probably one up on your screen right now that you're looking at while we're going through and figuring out what it is we're going to next.
Now, see, if these different layers, and by the way, most of them are sedimentary rock. Now, there may be some layers that are volcanic rock, but what is sedimentary rock? Well, what are sediments? Well, it's dirt that's moved by water. Okay, so in other words, it was mud, and during the flood, during the days of Noah, that mud, huge amounts, layers of mud, were moved around by the water, and that's what you see. And over time, they hardened and became stone. And so then there would be some layers laid down, and then there might be a volcanic eruption, so there might be volcanic layers, but most of it's sedimentary rock. So it was formed, with water. So if these were laid down over millions of years, certainly you would have topsoil between them. There's no topsoil. Why is there no topsoil? And why is there no signs of erosion? If each layer was there for millions of years and then another one was laid over top of it, or there would be erosion, there would be topsoil. Why is there no topsoil horizon, no erosion? Well, because they were laid down rapidly during the same period of time, and they have fossils of plants and animals in them. It's
in our last episode, you showed the picture of the looks like a plant that was in the rock.
Yeah.
And it's important to remember that those things happened during the flood and stuff. That happened possibly some of those things happened instantaneously.
Right.
Or
Yep.
a pile of mud just went over and covered
Yeah.
everything, you know what I mean, in a matter of minutes or seconds even.
Yeah. Yeah. Rapid burial.
Yeah, rapid, yes,
Yeah.
like you said, rapid burial. So, yeah, that's important to note.
Now, here's another thing. Some of these layers that you see in the Grand Canyon, those layers cover the entire North American continent. And then when you go over to England and Israel, the same layers are continued over there. So that shows that worldwide, these huge, massive amounts of mud were spread out on the ground over top of successive layers. Okay, now here's another thing. And yeah, John, see that picture, and
Yep.
we'll
And we're going to put that, we got a picture up already for everybody there. This, it's a tree that's inside the rock. It's a whole tree.
Yep.
Or, well, I mean, it's not a whole tree, but it's a
Fossilized trunk, yeah.
Yeah, it's a fossilized trunk there in the picture.
Yep. We call these polystrate fossils. The word poly means many. Straight refers to stratas. So a polystrate fossil is a fossil that goes up through the layers of rock. Okay, so you have this, you have this fossilized tree trunk. It's very obvious it's a tree trunk. You can tell just by looking at it. I have other pictures of this where it goes up through rocks, then it goes through two different coal beds, and continues up. I mean, there are numbers of these around the Earth. So you can't have layers of hard, solid rock and a tree growing under the ground, hundreds of feet below the ground, going up through it. What this shows is that the tree was thrown down there, and the different layers formed around it. It happened at the same time, and that tree going up through the layers shows all the layers were put down at once. I don't mean the same day, but in the same time period. Not years, but within
days or weeks, maybe.
Days or weeks, yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe months, I don't know.
Yeah.
But certainly not years.
Yes, that's the, yes, a tree is obviously not going to grow up through mud and rock. That goes against...
Hundreds of feet below the ground.
Yeah, that's just not how it works. People are, I think, hopefully smart enough to know that. And, that's important to know that trees grow up through the ground.
Yeah.
And, I mean, there's evidence of it in many, many different places. So,
Yes.
trees can't just grow through the ground.
Right.
Up through rock. You know what I mean? They were already growing, and then the mud and rock got laid down around it.
Right, yeah. Yeah, and I remember recently, not too long ago, seeing a picture down in a coal mine. This coal mine was a few hundred feet below the ground, and there was a coalified, in other words, it turned to coal, tree trunk that looked like the tree was broken off with the roots. Now, how did that get a couple hundred feet below the ground? Well, during the flood.
Yeah.
I mean, things that were on the surface got thrown down, mixed around, pushed around. I mean, the earth was destroyed.
Let me ask you a quick question in regards to that. It's going to take us a little bit off, but
that's okay.
Just something I thought of. All the continents were together at one point, right?
I believe so.
I mean, just the way that they all match up, they do look like they're kind of pieces in the puzzle that could fit back together. Now, is it possible that the Great Flood, because God in the Scripture it says that the waters came up from underneath, not necessarily that. I mean, I'm sure it was raining and stuff too, but God didn't dump, billions of gallons of water from the sky onto us. He opened up the fissures and they came up from underneath.
Right.
So I'm wondering if maybe that had something during the flood times. If maybe that's when Pangea, the one continent, broke apart. Maybe that's what the waters up through. Possibly. I'm just throwing that out there. I have no idea.
I think that's very likely. Yeah. And there's one theory called the Hydroplate Theory that says that there were massive amounts of water underneath the Earth's surface. So during the flood, the Earth split open. God caused that to happen. There's still a crack down the middle of the oceans. In fact, you look at the Atlantic Ocean, and it goes the whole way around the globe.
The trench.
Yeah.
That's what you're talking about, I think, right?
Well, it looks like it's sort of like a mountain, maybe a little bit, like a crack. Yeah, it's a crack. If you look at a relief map of the Atlantic Ocean, and it goes the whole way around the globe. So some people believe that maybe the massive amounts of water allowed the continents, when they split, to spread easier. And when they met resistance, they buckled, and that's what formed the mountains. You know.
That certainly sounds plausible.
Yeah. But yeah, I think that did happen during the flood. So now another thing you'll see in the Earth's surface, and wish I had pictures of it with me now. I don't, but well, I might have somewhere. I'll check then. But there's some places where you can see the rocks, that the layers are bent and folded. Now, you can't bend and fold rock, but if they're not completely hardened, and so the Earth's getting pushed around, and the mud that's not fully hardened, it's more like clay and it's buckled, that would explain how you would see the rocks and the layers that are bent.
Yeah.
And it's very distinct. It's easy to see.
Yeah. And also during the flood, I mean, Noah, while he was traveling around, there was no land. Everything was covered. Yeah. Everything was covered. And as we all know, we've seen, plenty of documentaries and movies. Under the water in the oceans, it's very violent. It can be very violent under the oceans. Right. And the currents and stuff, especially with the Earth being cracked and water coming up, could have easily shifted whole continental shelves around and so forth. Or maybe even the water coming up caused the continental shifts to happen.
Yeah, I think so.
Of course, God doesn't want us to know everything, or he would have told us everything. Some stuff I think he left so that we can grow and figure out for ourselves, or maybe he just doesn't want us to know until we stand before him. Yeah. And then he'll tell us everything we want to know, but that's the important thing, is that just because not everything is spelled out into the Bible, he gave us the tools he equipped us with the tools to figure things out. Science, mathematics. He gave us these tools so that we could try and figure some of these things out.
Right. He gave us a brain we're supposed to try to use too. Which we're trying to do. And
reasoning and logic. I mean, those are all things that God gave us in order to try and figure some things out for ourselves. Yeah. And of course, people would think that we just evolved this way over millions of years, but that's not the case.
You were saying, John, that the mountains were all covered. Some people would say, how is that possible? I mean, Mount Everest is like thousands of feet high. Well, you see, before the flood, there's good reason to believe that the mountains were not as high then.
Yeah.
But a lot of the mountain ranges and their height were probably affected by the flood. So, I don't believe that we had mountains that high.
Yeah.
Before the flood.
And also with the water coming up, the scripture saying the water comes up, comes up from underneath the ground. I mean,
the fountains of the deep were opened up.
Yeah. So, I mean, not only were there not probably too many high mountainous locations back then, as we still had, especially if we go by the theory that it was still one world before the flood. That's when the breaking of the world happened. Of course, there's evidence to suggest that it could have happened other times in the Bible as well. It might not have happened with the flood when the world broke apart. It could have happened, other times. Doesn't really specify, hey, this is when the world broke apart. Yeah. But the world breaking apart and moving is what caused those mountainous peaks to form anyway. Rock crashing into other rock and jutting the ground up. We all know from science, at least, that that's how mountains are formed, by continental shelves crashing into each other.
Right.
So they were moving at one point. So before they were all moving, there wouldn't be high mountainous peaks because none of the shelves were moving before that, and none of them had crashed into each other.
Yeah. So the pre-flood world was more conducive to health and longevity, and it was more stable geologically, evidently.
Yeah.
So, so here's another thing. If you look at these different layers of the Earth, and some people say, oh, look, that's millions of years. Okay, if there was a worldwide flood, like the Bible tells us there was, and of course there was, then that would have totally destroyed and reconstructed the surface of the Earth. So it would have erased the Earth's geological past record that would have been in there. Would have gotten erased. You know, when I was a kid, we used to have, I used to have a cassette tape player. I guess they still make cassettes, don't they? Or,
well, people like us, we remember them. But.
Yeah, people still have cassette. Okay, well, I remember
some of the newer viewers. A cassette is what we used to use before. I was about to say DVDs, but they don't really exist either.
Yeah.
Before all our music was digitally stored online, we used to use cassette tapes.
Yeah, yep. A cassette tape was about this big, and so I remember when I was probably like maybe 11 years old. For my birthday, my parents got me this cassette tape recorder. Tell you what, those things were awesome. You could, I had a stereo, so and it had the radio, so you could, if you wanted to record what was on the radio, you could record it on the cassette tape, and you had it. I mean, those things were great.
Yep, me too. Yep.
And you don't have that capability anymore. I guess you could record it with your iPhone, but
yeah, but you're right. It's not
the same.
Yeah.
So anyway, they got me this cassette recorder, and like I would record music on it, and but if I wanted to erase the tape, you know, you could erase that tape and re-record over it. Well, if there was a worldwide flood, like we see there is, you know, the evidence is very clear and abundant, then that would have erased the supposed geological record of millions of years, so it would have been gone. You know, so
yeah, good
another
point.
Another reason why it you know, the millions of years that the different layers do not show a history of millions of years.
Yeah,
it doesn't. Okay, now, so let's look at another thing that people interpret as evidence for, you know, a universe that's billions of years old or millions of years old, and that's distant starlight reaching the Earth. Okay, now this is what some people would say. The universe has to be billions of years old because those stars are so far away. Like they're billions and billions of miles away, and light travels at the speed of 186,000 miles per second. I think that's the speed of light.
It sounds right, I believe.
Yeah. Yep. And so they say, the universe, for the light, we're seeing stars from billions of miles away. So the universe, it would take billions of years for that light to actually reach Earth. Therefore, the universe must be billions of years old. Now, on the surface, that makes sense. It sounds logical. But
okay. If I could, the speed of light, just so that we get everything factually correct here, the speed of light is 299,792,458 meters per second.
Okay, so that's in meters.
Yeah, unfortunately, it gave it to me in meters.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, here we go. Miles per second, it's 186,000 miles per second.
Okay.
Yeah, let's just stick with miles per second because the rest of the numbers get very large after the seconds. So, yeah, it's miles per second. It's 186,000 miles per second is what the speed of light is.
Yeah. Okay, so now this, now on the surface, that sounds like a really good objection. Yeah, the universe would have to be billions of years old then. But the thing is, I remember reading where, according to Einstein's theory of relativity and different things that are way beyond my understanding, but I'm just telling you what they're saying, that if the Earth is near the center of the universe and gravity is stronger here, the speed of light could travel at different speeds even faster if you get out farther away from the gravitational center of the universe. Okay? So, and there is some evidence that we're near the center of the universe because it appears that, the stars and everything is moving away from us. Okay, so that's one possibility, that maybe the light traveled at different speeds when you're way far away, but when you get closer, then it travels closer to Earth's time.
Yeah.
How do we know what goes on out there?
That's what I was just about to say. As far as space goes, and thinking that we understand anything about what is happening in space. I don't believe that for a second. We understand very little about space travel, or what is happening out there in the universe. We're confined to our little corner of the galaxy, and there are billions upon billions upon billions of light years out there to explore. So to think that we have any idea about anything is ridiculous. Even as far as I'm concerned, even the laws of physics and the laws of gravity, they exist here a certain way, but that doesn't mean that, 10, 15, 20 light years away that it's not a little bit different, even fractionally different, because of a different gravitational pull or a black hole or something. You know what I mean? There's no way no way to know what happens out there beyond just the very corners that we have explored so far. We don't really know. We only know what kind of happens in our solar system.
Yeah. After I die and go to be with the Lord, I want to go explore out there for a while.
That's what I'm saying.
First I want to see Jesus and be with him.
Oh, and I want to have,
and my mom and dad who are in heaven.
Yep, all that. I'd like to talk to Jesus and God for a couple of eons personally, and then go out exploring.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, now, but here's another thing that God could have also, during creation, when he stretched out the heavens, he could have brought the light directly to earth too. So, well, someone might say, well, you're relying on supernaturalism and miracles. Well, if you believe the universe came into existence on its own, you're relying on a miracle.
I love how they got to say, oh no, this is how long it takes for that light to travel. Okay, and you're basing this off of your guess that it all came into existence with this big bang.
Yeah.
A large explosion happened and we're all here.
Yeah.
And so therefore, because of the laws set forth by the big explosion, light travels at this speed.
Yeah. Now here's another problem that even Big Bang theorists have. Okay, if you look at the universe, there's something that they call cosmic background radiation. So it shows that the universe, they call it a Big Bang or explosion. I would say that what they're observing is like a rapid, orderly expansion of the universe during creation week. So they call it a Big Bang. I just call it the expansion of the universe during creation. Like there are at least 6 different times in the Bible where it says that God stretched out the heavens.
Is that right?
Yeah. Oh, at least 6 times where he stretched forth, the heavens. It says it that exact.
I didn't know that. That's interesting.
Yeah, and we still see it expanding to this day.
Yeah.
But cosmic background radiation, what they found is that if you look at the average, the temperature of the universe, on average is pretty much even, and it's when you get away from stars and all that, it's about 2 degrees Kelvin, which would be on the Kelvin scale. So that would be a couple hundred degrees below zero. So it is really freezing cold out there. But the question is, how could the universe have exchanged that much light energy going from one end to the other, to where the energy is pretty much even? It couldn't have. There was not enough time for that, even in the evolutionist frame of mind. So they call this the horizon problem, because it's a problem for the evolutionists. How could all this energy balance out to where it's pretty even throughout the universe? There's not enough time for that. So they have a time distance travel problem too, a time light problem as well as the creationists. But here's what I believe happened. Okay, I believe that according to Genesis, God made the sun, he made the moon. We needed it at night. Even animals that are nocturnal, that can see in the dark, they still need a little light. And so and then God also made the stars, and it says he made them for signs and for seasons. So we help keep track of time by the sun and the moon and where the stars are and all that.
Yeah.
So one possible explanation is that God, during creation week, he put the stars in the sky where they could be viewed from Earth, but they were not as big. Like they were smaller. And then as God stretched them out, the light followed them. And then he had them get bigger to the size that they were. So that now when they're billions of years away, or light years away, the light was already here. And they, the light, as he stretched them out, the growing, you could call it the growing star theory. Now someone might say, well, that's a magical God. Yeah, well, your view says that magically the universe appeared on its own. Living things just magically popped up on their own.
Yeah.
So if you're allowed to invoke magic for the evolutionary... well then, it doesn't make sense that God could have done it that way. So my answer is I don't know for sure, but it doesn't necessarily preclude a younger Earth because there are explanations.
Yeah, I didn't know that it said that at least six times that God stretched out the heavens. That's interesting. That's very interesting.
Yeah. So that's how I would explain it. So the evolutionists, they have the horizon problem. They have that time travel problem. There's still not enough time, even in their atheistic billions of years view, for light energy to be exchanged from one end of the universe to another enough times that the temperature would be fairly even. So
I can spend some hours just thinking about that.
Yeah, it just blows your mind.
Yeah, I'm thinking about the stars that he did move far away that we can still see. What happens when the day comes, if the day comes, that some of the stars that we've seen pretty regularly in our sky don't show up anymore? Maybe.
Yeah.
I mean, because we're beyond using the stars for navigation and for seasons and so forth now.
Yeah.
God had to have anticipated that in his plan. And if he's, like you said, the universe was closer together, which is how we saw the stars, and then he stretched it out, but we still see the light from its original position because it takes time.
Yeah.
So my question is, what happens if the time comes where the light from where they used to be, and how about that? What if they're not where we think they are right now? The stars that we see in the sky.
Yeah.
I mean, if.
Yeah, true.
Based on our own scientific theory and the theory that we know about how fast light travels and stuff, just because we see a star where it is right now doesn't mean that it's still there. Obviously, it only travels 186,000 miles a second, so that means it could be somewhere. It's already somewhere else when we see it in the sky.
Yeah, and could a star blow up and we not even know it yet because we still see it before that light reached it,
Yeah, man, I could lose a couple hours just thinking about all that.
Yeah. So there's, we're not scientists, but we live in an educated and literate society, so you don't have to be a scientist to look at some of these things and consider do they make sense or not.
Yep.
Okay, now here's another thing that people use to draw the conclusion that the Earth is like billions of years old or millions of years old. And that's ice core samples. Sometimes they'll go to like the Greenland or some far northern place, and they'll drill down into the ice and get ice core samples. And there are places where it'll be dark and then light and then dark and then light. And so based on these studies of ice core samples, they'll say, look, the Earth is 3.2 million years old because from our ice core samples, we can tell that. We'll see there are several problems with that. One is they're assuming that each change in color is a year, and it's not always the case.
Yeah, that's...
Like you can have hot and cold, like you can have a freeze, then you can have a thaw, all in 1 year. Another thing is that the farther down you get, the more compressed the ice core is, and sometimes it's really difficult to tell, which ring, where one begins and one ends. I mean, it's very tough, and so this idea that there are annual, we'll call them rings. They're not, but they're not. They're freeze-thaw cycles. And so one thing that shows us that whole idea, we can tell it's millions of years old from ice cores, is something that happened during World War II. Okay, during World War II, there were some planes that were going to fly from the United States to Europe. But, they couldn't make it the whole way across the ocean because they didn't have enough fuel.
Yeah.
So they headed north to Canada. Then the plan was, I guess, to go to Iceland and maybe fuel up there, and then from there to Europe. But what happened is that the weather was really bad, and they were running low on fuel. Maybe the bad weather made them use more fuel.
Yeah.
Because that can happen.
Headwinds, yeah.
Yeah. Several years ago when my wife and I flew out to Alaska nonstop, it took us about 7.5 hours out. And then it took about 6.5 hours back home because we had the wind in our favor.
Yep.
So anyway, these planes, they had to land on the ice, and I don't know if the guys, I don't know if the guys lived or if they probably froze to death. I don't know. But anyway, years later, somebody had the idea of going back, trying to find those aircraft. They were called the Lost Squadron because I think there were like a total of 6 different planes.
Okay.
So someone had the idea, hey, I'd want one of those planes, and somebody with a lot of money, I guess, went back and to look for them. So they used, I think they used sonar, and they looked off the coast of Greenland, and they found, under the ice, they found the location of, I think, 2 of these planes. So they got permission from, the governmental authorities and all that, and they dug down into the ice, and they went down like 250 to 350 feet below the ice, and they found the planes. Okay, so this was in 1992 when they found them. Okay, so they were there since World War II, like in the 1940s.
Yeah.
Then in 1992 they found them. Well, they were down like 250 to 350 feet. Well, that's a lot of ice.
Yeah, it is.
So if you would have counted all those ice, if you took an ice core sample and counted all those, you would come up with, thousands and thousands of rings. But it wasn't the case. They were down that far. It was only, what?
40 years, yeah.
40 or 50 years.
50 years,
yeah. Something like that.
Yep.
Yeah, so the to rely on ice core samples to prove that you don't know if it was a year or how many different freeze-thaw cycles in a year or whatever. So you can't really go by that. It's not the perfect, hey, we have the perfect way of measuring, the age of the Earth through ice core samples. You can learn some things about the Earth's past, but it's not like an exact clock to measure that. Okay, so now let's talk about another thing that people look at and they think, okay, this indicates a really ancient Earth, millions of years old. That would be caves with stalactites and stalagmites. Okay, so I think stalactites grow from the ceiling and stalagmites from the floor. I think. I
think
I get
right.
those two mixed up, but I'm thinking stalactites, they're tight against the ceiling. I think that's... But anyway, I remember going to Indian Echo Caves.
Yeah, I went there when I was in elementary school many years ago.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. And so they would show stalactites, and in some I've been to other caves as well. Penn's Cave, and that one's all water, so you go in it in a boat. It's pretty cool. But sometimes the guides will say, "Don't touch those stalactites or stalagmites. They took millions of years to form." Well, that's not true. In the Lincoln Memorial, there's like a basement underneath it. You're underneath there, there's stalactites and stalagmites growing underneath the Lincoln Memorial. It all depends on how much mineral is in the water that runs down. And what they're finding now is that what actually got those caves started was that there are highly acidic... There were times when water that's very highly acidic came up closer to the surface from under the ground and dissolved a lot of the minerals. That's what got the caves started. And then, then the stalactites and stalagmites, You have water coming into the cave, dripping in slowly, bringing minerals with it. There are places where, there's a place in England where highly mineralized water comes down over this fall, and people hang teddy bears on it, and in a few weeks' time, the teddy bear is completely covered with, like, minerals. It looks like like stalactite stuff, like covering it.
Yeah.
So caves with stalactites and stalagmites, they do not represent millions of years. It all depends on how much water and how rich the water is in minerals. So now, another thing that people use to to try to say that the universe is millions of years old is radiometric dating. So they'll take rocks and they'll do radiometric dating, and through this they'll say, oh, this rock is 4.3 million years old. Well, what a lot of people don't realize about radiometric dating is that it doesn't work.
Yeah.
In fact, it doesn't work on rocks that we know the age of. Like, how could you know the age of a rock? Well, if a volcano erupts, and you know when the volcano erupted, and you take the volcanic rock and you test it, you know how old it is.
Yeah.
Well, they've taken rocks, they knew the age. Like, they took one from the lava dome at Mount St. Helens, tested it, and it showed like 350,000 years old. And it erupted in, within the last century.
Yeah.
I think in the 1980s.
I think so.
I have a picture here of Mount St. Helens, and so we can show that. But so maybe in our next part 2 of this, we can go into more detail about radiometric dating and how they do that, and why it doesn't work, why some forms of it, like carbon-14, can work to a certain degree, and I can explain what carbon-14 is and how it works, and maybe in part 2.
Yeah, excellent. We're going to separate this, and we're going to separate it into 2 parts, or of course it could just become its own episode. We haven't decided that yet, so you'll know when you check the episode. Thanks for tuning into this episode. If you enjoyed this episode, please like, comment, and share to help us reach more people. You can also go to our storefront and pick up some apparel. I don't think that you're going to be able to see it. It's pretty bright in this room today. But I'm wearing one of the new Boiling Point t-shirts. Pastor Gavin's is going to be on the way. He'll be wearing one soon. So make sure you check out our storefronts. That's at bonfire.com/store/The Boiling Point Podcast. We have shirts. We have many different products. Go check it out and buy something that'll help us grow also. And make sure you like, comment, share. Pastor Gavin and he has his own sort of podcasts. I'm not really sure what you call it. I guess it's a podcast. Yeah. He puts his sermons and his teachings about the Bible online on YouTube. So check out his YouTube station. Just go to youtube.com and search Gavin Whitcomb Sr. You can find him. You can also
I put him on Rumble too.
Do you?
Yeah, and on Clout.
What's your Rumble station?
No.
Well, I'll put that in the description. His Rumble station, his YouTube station, anywhere you can find Pastor Gavin is in the description of the video. So make sure you check the description of the video. That's also where you can find the storefronts. You can also follow me on Instagram at JDEDESIGNz, and that's with a Z. You can also go to facebook.com/JDEDESIGNz, buy some posters there. That also helps the podcast. We are on Facebook, facebook.com/The Boiling Point Podcast. Pastor Gavin is also on Facebook, facebook.com/mooresmountain.church. And now that we've told you where you can find all of our things, I am your host, JD. That is my senior faith correspondent, Pastor Gavin Whitcomb Sr. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the end. The gift you gave so that we